If you're just joining us, our top story, this breaking story, Russia launching a full-scale invasion of Ukraine with attacks on targets across the country. Kiev is saying that dozens of people have been killed, many have been injured in large-scale air and ground assault by Russian forces. And Russian President Putin says he has launched the military operation to, quote, secure the future of Russia as a sovereign nation. Western leaders, as we just heard there, have vowed to impose crippling sanctions. And let's go to Kiev. We can speak to on the phone Oleksiy Melnyk. He's the co-director of the Foreign Relations and International Security Programs of the Razumkov Center in Kiev. He's an expert on defense and national security and foreign policy. First of all, I just want to get your reaction on this invasion that we've seen start.
I wouldn't say anything new. You can imagine what kind of reaction if you wake up because of hearing very strange sounds in Kiev, and then you look at the internet and you see something that you simply can't believe. As the previous speaker said, well, it was expected, but again, it always takes you by surprise.
What is your analysis or your assessment of the state of the military incursion at this moment? Are you surprised to see the level of the incursion, and how long do you think Ukrainian forces can actually withstand the Russian military?
First of all, we really predicted such a scenario, and I can't currently make any assessment about how long our armed forces are going to defend the aggression, because Ukraine has been attacked, as been said, from the air using missiles and the whole area of Ukraine from the Belarusian border. And it's, let me tell you, it's a few thousand kilometers. Ukraine is not as strong militarily, but as far as I know, Ukrainian forces are fighting, and also there is a mobilization organized by the government, self-mobilization, Ukrainians getting arms, and we are preparing for the worst.
Yeah, I want to ask you also about the measures that the Ukrainian government has taken, what we've seen from President Zelensky so far, issuing martial law. I mean, how will that help Ukraine in these coming hours and days?
Well, if we can say something about normal, today in the morning there are more cars coming out of Kiev. Of course, there are queues at the gas stations, no cash in the cash machines, but there is no real panic. I mean, people are calm as they can be in this situation, and the martial law is something that should be introduced a few days before. But anyway, better late than never.
What kind of help does Ukraine need right now on defense and security, but also in assistance, also financially and humanitarian assistance?
We do understand this is our war, and our main mission is to stop the Russians. But we also, first of all, let me thank you all the support being provided and promised. But now I think that there are actions needed more than just sanctions and talks, because you really need to send message to Mr. Putin to cause some pain for him. And also I disagree with your assessments of the Russian people. Please take in mind that this is the same people who celebrated together with Putin the Crimea annexation. A few days ago, for half of them, 50% of Russians supported this military operation. So please don't make another mistake saying that Russian people are not responsible for their leaders doing.
That's an interesting point, Mr. Melnyk. I want to ask you about what you just said there, that we have to send a strong message to Mr. Putin. If you look at President Putin's response to sanctions in the past, he said in 2020 that previous sanctions essentially made Russia just have to think smarter about how to conduct its economy. What is the right message then to President Putin at the moment?
I think that you tried to apply this three approaches like deterrence, defense, and communication. And now I think that none of them worked. So now I think that something needs to be done to isolate Russia. I mean, really isolate Russia from the civilized world. And also, as you said, the pretext of the Putin's actions is demilitarization of Ukraine and denazification. I mean, quite ridiculous. But we need to think something about disarming Russia. I mean, disarming in any sense, economic, militarily. First of all, please just don't pay him for his gas. Get rid of his gas. Get rid of his main source of money.
Okay, disarming Russia in any means possible. The message there from Oleksiy Melnik, the co-director of the Foreign Relations and International Security Programs of the Razumkov Center in Kiev. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock gave a statement earlier in which she pledged to unleash a full package of sanctions on Russia. This is what she said.
This war is aimed at destroying one thing for sure, the hopes of people in Ukraine that after decades of lack of freedom, that they would have a right to democracy, peace, and a better future without oppression. President Putin, you will never destroy this dream. It is growing in Ukraine, and it is growing in your own country. It is my firm conviction that in Russia as well, many people will be deeply embarrassed about this, will be outraged that in the name of Russia, there has been scrupulous murder on their brothers and sisters in Ukraine. We are all shocked this morning, but we are not helpless. We have prepared for these events and will work together with our partners and allies in a concerted effort, and will coordinate every measure we take with the Ukraine, within the EU, within NATO, within the G7, and the full package of sanctions will be unleashed on Russia.
Full package of sanctions. We heard there from the German foreign minister. Let's bring in our chief political editor, Michaela Küffner, who's been following the reaction here in Berlin for us. Hi, Michaela. What would that full package include? We've heard Ursula von der Leyen speaking also about the coordinated sanctions with the European Union. So what exactly are they referring to?
Yes, well, we'll learn the full package this afternoon, but already announcement of sanctions on individuals, oligarchs, access to financial markets. We are due to learn whether that will include the SWIFT payment system. I would almost expect so at this moment in time. So very strong action, non-military action, a strong response from a European Union, NATO, a transatlantic alliance that is demonstrating that it stands united at this very moment in time. But as we heard from Annalena Baerbock, this front line that we are observing actually runs through our societies right now, because this is an attack, an apparent attack on democracy itself, on the ability of democratic states to act. And that's also why we heard there from European leaders, from Ursula von der Leyen, that Putin will have to explain to his own people this war. Well, the big question is, does he even, or can he just go through with it? And it is the moment where democracy has to prove that it can deliver protection for its own people and stability here in Germany, Europe and beyond.
Indeed, Michaela, and that's bringing up questions again here in this debate here in Germany about whether to send Ukraine weapons, especially as this invasion has started. And we've seen a few voices changing their tune today. We spoke to Thomas Silberhorn of the CSU a little bit earlier, who said, yes, it is now time to talk about sending weapons to Ukraine. Is that debate actually going to move the needle? Will we see the German government shift its policy entirely on this?
That debate is back. It is flaring out, but I don't think it will shift the needle, simply because also the big question is whether Germany's Bundeswehr, its armed forces, actually have that terribly much to offer that they could simply hand over. There's deep frustration also in the Bundeswehr leadership. The head of the armed forces actually taking to LinkedIn this morning, basically stating that the German armed forces don't really have very much. In fact, the German outlook on Russia is looking very pale this morning. The party, the Social Democrat Party of German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is holding an emergency virtual meeting this afternoon to debate the next steps. After all, it's the Social Democrat Party that had been, if anything, holding their chancellor back from taking a stronger stance on Russia, particularly on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which he saw as an entry ticket to exhaust all avenues, all diplomatic avenues, when he went to Moscow last week. Then we saw Olaf Scholz react, now saying that that pipeline will be stopped. And we're hearing from Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, that this was a long-planned attack. So clearly, Germany, Europe, the West has been upstaged by Vladimir Putin, who was planning this for a very long time while protesting a bit too much, even in recent days.
Interesting that you say upstage, Michele, because I want to ask you about a tweet that we actually brought into the program a little bit earlier from the former defense minister, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. She was the defense minister, many of our viewers will remember, under Chancellor Angela Merkel in this last term. And she said that this has been a historic mistake, essentially, from the West, and that nothing has been done to deter President Putin. A good deal of hindsight there, of course. But what did you make of that? Is there a sense in Berlin today that real mistakes were made?
Absolutely. I mean, it's always interesting to hear from someone like Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, who held a lot of responsibility, who at some stage was seen as the heir apparent to Angela Merkel as a conservative leader and chancellor, and then failed. So politically, she has nothing to lose. And it is her who speaks of a historic failure. Now, that tweet is really going viral right now. There is a very steep learning curve, a shock sense of learning over Russia, over Vladimir Putin, and that when he was seen as someone who needs to be brought on board as a partner for security for a very long time, well, this has just evaporated literally overnight here. And we are seeing the G7, NATO, everybody scrambling to really find a way to approach this situation, because geographically, certainly Russia is not going to go away. That's where we stand right now. But a shock moment, particularly for the Social Democrats, who were seen in the past as Russlandversteher, understanders of Russia. Their chief whip, who was one such person, of Mützenich, this morning quite clearly took a U-turn. He said, clearly, Vladimir Putin is a war criminal. That's where we stand right now. But where Ukraine is standing right now, it's a lot of rhetoric, it's economic support, but no military protection that it needs right now.
All right, Michaela, following the voices for us here in Berlin. We'll speak to you a little bit later. Thank you for that analysis. Let's bring you up to date on where we stand. Russia has launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The Russian military is carrying out a ground and air assault on targets across the country, including in big cities and on the capital, Kiev. Ukraine says its army is fighting back. Civilians are trying to flee in some places. Reports of casualties are coming in. Western nations are expressing outrage at the offensive and say Moscow will pay a heavy price.
With dawn came the bombs. Russia attacked sites across Ukraine. The Russian troops that had been amassing on the border for weeks started rolling in, recorded on surveillance cameras by Ukraine's border police. Russia's leader, Vladimir Putin, announced the military operation in a broadcast on Russian TV. He disparaged Ukraine's democratically elected government and asked Ukrainian soldiers to surrender. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky introduced martial law. And he made an emotional plea to Russians.
I'm addressing you, the Russian people, as a Ukrainian citizen. We are separated by a border stretching more than 2,000 kilometers, and right now there are 200,000 of your soldiers there. Your leadership has authorized them to move into the territory of another country. And this could mark the start of a major war on the European continent.
Black smoke from a Ukrainian military airport in Chugiev in the east of the country. Russia confirms that they bombed the site. A housing block was hit, and distraught residents were left grieving the first casualties in a new war they did not want. As the world condemned Russia's attack on its neighbour, the EU Commission President said all of Europe is under threat.
Russia's target is not only Donbas. The target is not only Ukraine. The target is the stability in Europe and the whole of the international peace order. And we will hold President Putin accountable for that.
Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz promised more sanctions.
We will be coordinating closely with our international partners in NATO and in the European Union today in order to place further severe sanctions against Russia now. And it is good that we have prepared for this eventuality carefully. The aim of our sanctions is to make it clear to the Russian leadership that they will pay a bitter price for this aggression.
But sanctions can't come soon enough for many Ukrainians. In the capital, Kyiv, cars jammed the roads as residents tried to flee the city.
Well, that is a look at where things stand at the moment in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And as we said and saw there are multiple reports coming in from across the country of Russia's air and ground assault. And we have William Glucroft with us to give us a better picture of what that invasion looks like at the moment.
That's right, Sumi. We've been seeing the pictures for months of Russian troops building up all around Ukraine. And now the unthinkable has happened. Those troops are moving into Ukraine. Let's have a look on the map of all the sides that Russian troops, as many as 190,000 of them, are coming in on the north, the east, and specifically the south. We have some major cities here in Ukraine. We've heard reports, and remember, these are reports. It's very difficult to confirm a lot of this information in this kind of stressful, chaotic, violent situation. But we've heard reports of explosions in Kharkiv, a city to the east. We've been hearing things about amphibious landings in port cities like Mariupol, very important strategic areas for Ukraine, port cities also like Odessa. And we've also been hearing reports of explosions in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. Now, we have to remember, if we focus over to the east, that is the separatist, the Russian-supported separatist part of Ukraine that is not recognized by the rest of the world, actually. And that's where Russian troops first entered, according to Putin's own announcements on Monday. And they've been pushing in from the east, along with troops, as said, through the south, and with air attacks, as we've been hearing in Kiev and Kharkiv. And what we are seeing now, we've seen in pictures, masses of cars, of traffic, of people trying to get out of the capital, Kiev, possibly moving to Lviv, which is a city all the way far in the west, the border with Poland. You'll remember in the last several weeks, Western diplomats have been relocating there, thinking it's a safer city, being further away from potential fronts. Now, what you can't see in this map is there's a river that comes right down the middle of Ukraine, the Dnieper River. And one fear is that Russian troops coming in from the south, attacking by air, and coming in from the north through Belarus could actually cut Ukraine off east and west. And that is what Ukrainian forces are facing in a very, very difficult situation. Again, Sumi, as we know, very uncertain what's going on right now. We just have to take reports as they come and see where things go between the forces right now.
Thanks, William. Thanks for updating that picture for us. As you said, we are trying to verify a lot of those images and reports that we're hearing coming in from across Ukraine with our correspondents as well. But first, let's take a look again at some of those early reactions to Russia's attack on Ukraine that were coming in this morning. The Ukrainian foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, went on Twitter to say Putin has just launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Peaceful Ukrainian cities are under strikes. This is a war of aggression. Ukraine will defend itself and will win. The world can and must stop Putin. The time to act is now. And here's what the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said. He directly appealed to the Russian president, saying, President Putin, in the name of humanity, bring your troops back to Russia. This conflict must stop now. And the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz earlier said in a statement the Russian attack on Ukraine is a blatant violation of international law. It cannot be justified by anything. Germany condemns in the strongest possible terms this unscrupulous act by President Putin. Our solidarity goes out to Ukraine and to its people. And among those reactions, China has asked for all parties to exercise restraint after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. A foreign ministry spokeswoman refused to call it an invasion, asking instead for dialogue.
We hope the region can maintain peace, and we call on all parties to exercise restraint and prevent the situation from getting out of control. At the same time, I would like to reiterate China's position that true security should be comprehensive and sustainable, and legitimate concerns by all parties should be respected and addressed. We hope that all relevant parties do not shut the door to peace, but instead engage in dialogue, consultation and negotiation to alleviate the situation and prevent it from escalating.